Sometimes the most powerful transformation doesn't begin with action, but with silence, not in chasing more, but in choosing less. When you stop needing the world to fill you, that's when your soul finally begins to rise. There comes a time when silence speaks louder than any words, when desire settles into quiet and you start to hear something deeper, a rhythm beneath the surface noise. It's not your cravings, it's your soul remembering its own power. We live in a world that constantly pushes us to chase, to touch, to consume. But very rarely are we taught to pause, and in that pause something ancient stirs, not the fear of missing out, but the freedom of tuning in. Abstinence isn't about saying no, it's about rediscovering something. It's the act of quieting the body so that the soul finally gets a chance to speak. When people hear the word abstinence, their thoughts often go straight to what they can't have, to rules, to what they're being denied. But to someone walking the path of self-control, abstinence isn't some dry wasteland. It's a garden. It's not emptiness. It's a redirection of everything. Every drop of energy, every bit of attention, every spark of longing isn't spilled outward anymore. It's pulled back inside, and once that happens, something powerful begins to shift. The noise fades, the chaos settles, and the quiet voice inside begins to rise. In Eastern philosophy, energy isn't wasted, it's reused. The body, the mind, and the spirit are one flowing, living system. What you hold back in one area feeds another. When we practice abstinence not from fear or guilt, but from wisdom, we start collecting life energy. In Chinese, it's called Kai. When this energy isn't constantly scattered by our impulses or desires, it begins to build up. Where does it go? It starts reinforcing your inner awareness, sharpening your mind, and deepening your presence. Abstinence becomes the fire where your focus is forged. Think of a river constantly flooding its edges, rushing everywhere without control. That's how many people live. Endless distractions, non-stop desires, rushing from one thing to the next without a break. But when you build a channel for that wild river, it has direction. It gains force. It can move mountains. That's what happens with desire. When you give it structure, it turns into strength. When you choose to guide it, it becomes your power. I once met a man in his late 50s who had spent much of his life chasing love. He'd been married 3 times, and between marriages, he never really stayed single. He was always jumping from one relationship to the next, seeking closeness, approval, connection. But eventually, it all started to feel hollow. One day, tired and worn out, he told me, "I don't even know what I want anymore. I only know how to chase. I've never actually stood still." So he made a bold decision. He chose a full year of abstinence, no dating, no intimacy, no emotional attachments, most importantly, no seeking. At first, he said the silence was unbearable, like turning off the music in a room where he'd been dancing blindly for years. But in that silence, something began to shift. He started reconnecting with his breath. He began to feel the earth under his feet. For the first time, he could actually hear his own thoughts, not the ones driven by craving, but those rooted in truth. That year changed everything, not because he gained something new, but because he finally uncovered what was already inside him. His strength, his judgment, his boundaries. Later he said, "Now, I love from a place of wholeness, not hunger." That made all the difference. This is what abstinence really is. It's not starving your life. It's strengthening your soul. Modern science now supports what spiritual traditions have taught for centuries. Habit, especially emotional and sexual ones, create strong patterns in the brain. The brain links pleasure to these repeated behaviors. But when you stop and practice abstinence, especially from habits that are excessive or reactive, your brain starts to change. It's called neuroplasticity. Your mind rewires itself. Your reward system gets a chance to reset. Dopamine, the chemical that drives your urges, settles. The outcome: stronger self, control, more clarity, better emotional balance. What monks knew through stillness and self-control, neuroscience is now proving. And why does this matter in relationships? Because when your nervous system is calm, your presence deepens. Real connection doesn't come from physical touch or even words. It comes from presence. When you're at peace inside, your partner feels safe around you. When you aren't trying to use them to fill a gap inside yourself, they can meet you as an equal, not as someone entangled in your need. In this way, abstinence isn't about turning away, it's about refining. It's preparing your inner world before sharing it with someone else. And from this place, you become magnetic. Not in a flashy or tempting way, but in the way a mountain draws clouds. Strong, still, grounded. There's a story from Taoist tradition. A young student had become obsessed with a girl in his village. His desire for her was consuming his mind. His teacher noticed that his training had slipped, so he took him deep into the woods to a quiet well. "Look into the water," the teacher said. "What do you see?" "My reflection," the student replied. The teacher dropped a stone into the well. The surface rippled. "Now what do you see?" "Nothing, just waves." The teacher nodded. "That's your mind when it's full of craving, distorted and unclear." They waited. Eventually the water settled. "Now," asked the teacher, "my reflection is back." The teacher placed a hand on his shoulder. Abstinence isn't to crush desire. It's to still the mind so you can see yourself. Only then can you know if it's love or illusion. That message is timeless. Without inner stillness, we don't know what we really want. And without clarity, our relationships turn into mirrors of confusion. When the body is constantly in motion, chasing, grabbing, reacting, it drowns out the soul. But when we bring stillness to the body, when we train our desires, not with force, but with wisdom, something rare begins to emerge. The soul starts to speak again, through feeling, through breath, through quiet knowing. You begin to feel when someone's words don't match their energy. You sense things you couldn't before. This isn't some magic trick, it's awareness. And awareness isn't weakness, it's intelligence. It helps you move through life and relationships with grace. You can sense when someone is hurting without them saying a word. You can feel when to speak and when silence is better. This sensitivity comes only when your inner world isn't full of chaos. There's another story. A woman in her 40s had just ended a long relationship. She felt drained and lost, so she chose 6 months of abstinence, not just physically, but emotionally. No dating apps, no late night texts, no fantasy thoughts about what could have been. Instead, she went inward. She journaled. She did breathwork. She took silent walks. She learned to enjoy her own company. At first, it was hard, like losing a limb. But slowly, she realized what she'd been addicted to wasn't love. It was distraction, the comfort of someone else's approval, the relief of not having to face her own emptiness. But in that silence, her creativity returned. Her laughter came back. She wrote, "I thought I lost myself in that relationship. But the truth is, I had never really met myself until now." That is the shift abstinence can bring. When the outer noise goes quiet, what rises isn't emptiness, it's self. Psychologists call this introspection, our ability to sense our inner state. People who practice mindful abstinence often report deeper awareness of their heartbeat, breath, energy shifts. And that awareness helps emotional balance. You start noticing stress before it overwhelms you. You feel tension before arguments escalate. You stop reacting and start responding. In relationships, this builds safety. Like fasting helps cleanse the body, abstinence gives space for the heart to heal. It clears out old attachments and patterns. The space left behind isn't empty. It's sacred. It's where your inner guidance resets. In traditional Eastern medicine, the kidneys are seen as the seat of life force and willpower. Overindulgence, especially in sexual energy, without grounding, drains this life force. But when you choose conscious abstinence, that energy returns. Your will grows stronger. Your clarity sharpens, not just about people, but about your purpose. So what does this mean in day life? It means when you find yourself needing someone else's attention to feel worthy, pause. When you keep looking for touch or conversation to avoid loneliness, pause. When your desires become desperate, pause. Not to punish yourself, but to listen. Because underneath that panic is a softer truth, need that no one else can fill. When the body is still, the soul begins to whisper, "You are enough. You are not broken. You are already whole. You don't have to give your energy away to be loved. You can love without losing yourself." That's when abstinence becomes freedom. Not freedom from others, but freedom from dependency. It opens a space where love becomes an offering, not a need. And when your body is still, something magical happens. You realize silence is not emptiness. It's full presence. Living in presence doesn't mean avoiding life. It means entering it fully without being ruled by emotions. Presence is not escaping. It's anchoring. Not being dragged by thoughts, fears, or distractions. It's focusing your attention fully on this moment. And presence isn't for monks alone. It's a skill we all need. In love, in family, in friendship. When someone is truly present with you, you feel it. Their breath is steady. Their eyes stay with you. Their energy is calm. In their presence, you don't feel judged. You feel seen. This isn't just emotion. It's biology. Your nervous system is always scanning for safety. It's called neuroception. Your body senses safety before your mind even notices. When someone is present, their breath slows. Their voice softens. Their body opens. And your nervous system reads that message. This is safe. This is okay. Presence holds relationships together. Not clever talk, not emotions, but how well you regulate your own energy. Because when you're calm, others feel it too, and only then can they open up, connect, and feel truly understood. There was once a therapist who worked with a couple on the edge of divorce. The wife said, "He's never really here. Even when we talk, I feel alone." The husband said, "But I do talk. I ask about your day. What more do you want?" Instead of explaining, the therapist asked them to try something. For 5 minutes, say nothing. Just face each other, really be there, no fixing, no performing. They agreed. At first it was awkward, but then the husband's body softened. The wife's breathing slowed. She began to cry. "This," she whispered, "this is what I've been needing, not your words, you." That's the difference between being near someone and truly being with them. And presence doesn't happen by accident. It has to be trained, protected. Often it is born through abstaining, not just from people, but from constant distractions, from the need to always check your phone, from filling every quiet space with noise. Real presence shows up when you give yourself space, when stillness becomes normal. In martial arts, students first learn to control their breath, because breath is life. It's the link between your thoughts and your body. When breath is shallow, the mind is anxious. When it's slow and deep, the mind becomes clear. This matters not just in fighting, but in every argument, every relationship. Every conflict is a test of breath. Every tension asks, will you stay centered or lose yourself? Try this next time you're about to argue. Pause. Take a deep breath. Feel the air go into your belly. Hold it. Then let it go slowly. Ask yourself, am I speaking to connect or to control? That one breath can change everything, between reacting and responding, between causing hurt and building understanding. Even science backs this up. Conscious breathing activates the vagus nerve, powerful part of the nervous system. It lowers your heart rate, reduces stress hormones, and helps you feel empathy. When you're calm, you can sense others better. You don't just hear words, you hear what's beneath them. You don't speak from your pain, you speak from your wisdom. Your body also has a voice. Posture speaks. When you sit upright, shoulders down, chest open, you show quiet confidence. Not pride, not weakness, but a steady kind of power. This posture is not for others. It's a message to your own body. I'm grounded, I'm safe, and others feel that, especially children, especially those who have been hurt. They know when you're really with them, and they respond. A teacher once told me, the way you sit at the table is how you sit in life. Meaning, your body reveals your mind. If you're tense, fidgeting, or staring at your phone, your mind is not present. But if you're grounded, alert, and at ease, your mind is likely clear. This is why breath and posture matter. They're not small things. They are doors to deeper presence, and presence is the key to connection. Let's now turn towards something just as important, emotional strength. Just like the body builds muscle through lifting and resisting, your emotional body becomes stronger through conscious restraint. Every time you choose not to react, not to fall into an old habit, not to chase temporary comfort, you are building emotional power. And like physical strength, it may not be obvious from the outside, but people will feel it around you. A common mistake is thinking that emotional freedom means doing whatever you feel like in the moment. But real freedom is the opposite. It's not being controlled by those feelings. It's knowing they're there, feeling them fully, but not letting them decide your next move. That's what true self-control is. And this is how abstinence becomes more than just a physical practice. It becomes a way of building strength in your heart. A young woman once told me her story. She had been deeply hurt after being ghosted by someone she believed was serious. The emotions were intense: anger, confusion, sadness, longing. Her first instinct was to text him to ask why, to post vague things online hoping he'd see them. But something inside her stopped her. She remembered a teaching from her meditation class. Don't act until the water is clear. So she didn't text. She didn't post. She sat with her pain. She cried. She wrote in her journal. She breathed through it. A few days passed, and the urge to reach out faded. What was left behind wasn't emptiness. It was something solid. Self-respect, insight. She told me later that although the pain was real, she finally understood that it didn't need to rule her. That decision not to act on impulse, that was the beginning of her healing. And that is the gift of restraint, the strength to choose your response instead of being pushed by your pain. Abstinence trains you for this. It shows you how to sit with discomfort without running from it. It teaches you that not every feeling needs a reaction. Some feelings just need to be seen, acknowledged, and allowed to pass. And as this becomes natural, something else happens. Your intuition becomes clearer. When your emotional field is calm, you can hear the deeper messages of life. You begin to trust your inner signals again. This matters especially in love, because love is not just passion. It's not just chemistry. Real love requires stability, clarity, and timing. And you cannot know if a connection is true if you're acting from unhealed wounds or unrecognized fears. Abstinence helps you pause. It gives you time to see the other person clearly, not through the lens of need, but through the lens of presence. Can I be myself with them? Can I be silent with them? Do I feel peace when they are near? These are questions that only a quiet heart can answer. When you're always caught in needing attention or escaping your own emptiness, you miss these answers. You mistake excitement for truth. You confuse longing for compatibility. But abstinence gives you the space to separate illusion from what is real. When you no longer need someone to complete you, you can see them for who they truly are. Not as a solution, not as a distraction, but as another soul on their path. There is power in this kind of love. Love without possession. Love without desperation. Love that grows from two whole people who have met themselves first. But that kind of love cannot happen if you're afraid of being alone. Abstinence becomes your training ground. It prepares you to be alone without being lonely, to be whole without needing to be filled. And from that wholeness, you attract different relationships, ones that reflect your depth, not your wounds. This inner stillness changes more than just your relationships. It touches your work, your creativity, your decision. When you're no longer controlled by every craving or reaction, you begin to live from intention. You no longer follow what's loud. You follow what's true. And this changes how you show up in the world. You become less reactive and more grounded, less consumed and more focused, less driven by need and more guided by purpose. Even in spiritual traditions, the most powerful beings are not the ones who can perform miracles. They are the ones who have mastered themselves. The sages, the monks, the wise elders, they all share something in common. They have learned to be still. They have learned to say no, not because they're afraid of life, but because they know the value of energy. They don't waste their breath on things that drain them. They don't chase what doesn't feed them. They are careful where they place their attention, because they understand that attention is sacred, and so are you. Your attention is sacred. Your energy is sacred. Your presence is sacred. The world may not remind you of this, but your soul knows it. And that's why sometimes it pulls you back. It quiets you. It empties you. Not to punish you, but to prepare you, to help you see what truly matters, to teach you how to listen again. Because only in silence can we hear what's eternal. Think about the most peaceful people you've ever met. Not the loudest, not the most entertaining, but the ones whose presence made you feel safe. The ones who didn't need to prove themselves, who listened more than they spoke, who made you feel like time slowed down. Those are the people who have tasted stillness. They don't rush. They don't cling. They radiate calm. And that calm isn't something they were born with, it's something they built, through solitude, through choice, through discipline, through abstinence, and you can build that too, not overnight, but slowly, gently, steadily. It begins with one pause, one choice not to follow an old pattern, one moment where you listen instead of reacting, one day where you let yourself feel instead of running. And little by little, your nervous system rewires, your mind clears, your energy gathers, you become centered, you become strong, you become present. You begin to understand that you are not your urges, you are not your cravings, you are not your past. You are the space beneath all of it, the awareness that sees, the breath that remains steady, the heart that still beats even in silence. And in that awareness, you remember your power, not the power to control others, but the power to guide yourself, to live from depth, to love from fullness, to offer, not chase. This is the path of abstinence, not a path of lack, but of return to your own center, return to your own voice, return to the parts of you that got lost in the noise. It is not easy, but it is real, and it is worth it. Because what you gain is not just self-control, it's self-respect. What you gain is not just clarity, it's freedom. What you gain is not just stillness, it's strength. So if you're in a season of solitude, don't rush out of it. Let it shape you. Let it strip away what isn't truly you. Let it show you that you can survive without the things you thought you needed, and more than survive, you can shine. You can radiate a peace that no one gave you and no one can take away. And when the time comes to connect again, whether with a partner, a friend, or a community, You will bring something rare. You will bring presence. You will bring truth. You will bring a heart that isn't desperate to be filled, but ready to give. In that kind of heart, that heart changes lives. That heart creates love that lasts. There's something powerful that happens when a person no longer fears being alone. Not the kind of being alone that comes with bitterness or escape, but a sacred kind of aloneness where you meet yourself without distractions. In that quiet space, you realize that the most important relationship in your life is the one you have with your own soul. Not because others don't matter, but because every other connection will be shaped by that one. You begin to see that loneliness isn't always a lack of people. It's often the absence of self-connection. And when you no longer run from that silence, when you stop trying to fill every moment with noise or attention, a calm confidence rises. You don't need to explain yourself as much. You don't crave validation like before. You start to feel at home inside your own skin. And that's what makes you magnetic. Not the way you look, not the things you own, but the peace you carry. The quiet sense that you know who you are, and that you don't need to prove it. People are drawn to that because deep down we all want to feel safe. We all want to feel seen. And when you are rooted in yourself, you become a mirror that helps others feel themselves too. It's in this space that deeper relationships become possible. Not just romantic ones, but friendships, family connections, even work relationships. When you bring your full presence into a room, people notice. They may not understand what it is at first, but they feel it. They feel that you listen differently. You speak slower with intention. You don't rush to fill silence. You aren't playing roles, you're just there, fully there, and that is rare. But none of this happens by accident. It comes from doing the inner work. It comes from moments when you choose not to escape your discomfort, but instead sit with it, breathe through it, learn from it. That's what abstinence really is. It's not a punishment. It's a practice, a way of training your spirit to hold steady when everything inside wants to reach out, grab something, be distracted. And the more you train, the stronger you become. There will be times when you feel tempted to give in. Times when the silence feels too loud. When your hands ache to text someone. When your heart feels empty. When the urge to escape yourself comes creeping back in. But these are the moments where your growth happens. These are the turning points when you choose to stay present through the ache. When you remind yourself, this feeling won't break me, it's here to teach me. And slowly, those urges lose their grip. Not because you fought them with force, but because you understood them. You gave them space. You let them rise and fall like waves. And in that space, you found something more solid than the wave itself. You found the ocean inside you. The steady, unshaken presence beneath the surface. That's what this is really about. Finding your ground again, returning to the you that isn't tossed around by every emotion or situation. The you that remains steady in change, calm in storms, rooted even when the world feels uncertain. That part of you has always been there. It just got buried under layers of habits, noise, and fear. Abstinence is the quiet shovel that helps you uncover it again. Sometimes people think strength looks like power, control, success. But real strength often looks like softness, like someone who could have reacted, but didn't. Someone who could have chased, but chose to stay. Someone who could have filled the void, but instead allowed it to become a space of growth. This kind of strength is invisible to many, but deeply felt by the ones who are ready to receive it. And the beauty of it is that it's always available. No matter your past, no matter how long you've been caught in old patterns, you can begin again. Right now, with one breath, one pause, one choice not to run. That's how change starts. Not with a big moment, but with a small decision repeated over and over again until it becomes who you are. You'll notice the shift in the smallest places. The way you respond to a difficult message, the way you sit with a craving instead of feeding it, The way you walk slower, speak softer, feel deeper. The way you notice birds singing again, the light on your skin, the rhythm of your own heartbeat. Life begins to return, not the chaotic, scattered kind, but the sacred kind. The kind that flows from being in harmony with yourself. You may start to understand that fulfillment doesn't come from getting more, but from needing less. That peace isn't found by adding things, but by removing what no longer serves. And that love, true, deep, lasting love, can only be received when you have first made space for it by clearing out everything false. So maybe you're in a place right now where things feel quiet or even empty. Maybe you've been walking away from people, habits, situations that once gave you comfort. Maybe you're feeling the ache of letting go. But let me remind you, this is not the end. This is the middle, the sacred middle, the space where the old has fallen away and the new has not yet arrived. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's holy, because in this in-between you are being reshaped, rewritten, remembered. Your soul is reteaching you how to be whole again, and it's using silence as its language, so don't rush through this. Don't fill it too quickly. Let it speak. Let it clear away what isn't you. Let it remind you that your worth has never depended on what others give you, but on what lives inside you. There will come a day when someone enters your life and feels the peace you carry. They won't be drawn to your looks, your status, your charm. They'll be drawn to your stillness, to your self-respect, to the way you are rooted in your being, and they'll feel safe, not because of anything you say, but because of who you've become in the quiet. And you'll know that all the time you spent alone, all the moments you sat in silence, all the tears you didn't cover with distractions, they all brought you here. They all shaped you into someone who can now love without fear, without need, without losing yourself. Someone who can give without emptying, who can connect without clinging, who can stay without forcing. That's the gift of this path, not just peace, but power, not just clarity, but compassion, not just stillness, but strength. You become the kind of person who no longer chases love, but becomes love, who no longer waits for happiness to arrive, but carries it within. So if you're in the process of learning how to be with yourself, keep going. If you're choosing silence over noise, presence over distraction, depth over drama, keep going. If you're letting your nervous system settle, your mind quiet, your spirit rise, keep going. Because what you're doing is rare. It's needed, and it's leading you somewhere beautiful. Emotional strength is one of the most powerful forces in relationships. This inner strength matters deeply because love without self-control can turn into attachment, and when attachment is left unchecked, it can turn into neediness. But when you've trained your emotional strength through waiting, through pausing, through mindful choosing, you come into relationships not with emotional hunger, but with something to give. You bring presence, not emptiness. This kind of offering has power. It tells the other person, I want you, but I don't need you to fill some hole inside me. I choose you not because I'm lacking, but because I feel full and want to share that wholeness with you. This is what real partnership is made of. But let's not pretend this process is always pleasant. Emotional restraint, like physical training, can be tough. It means sitting with uncomfortable feelings instead of avoiding them. It's the practice of not sending that angry text, not giving in to thoughts of revenge, and not falling back into old patterns of feeling unloved. In these moments, the way forward isn't always clear, but the practice is simple. Pause, breathe, and notice. Just like a warrior trains in stillness before stepping into the fight, we also train in quiet before engaging deeply in emotions. This training changes how the brain works. When we hold back from reacting emotionally right away, we make the part of the brain responsible for thinking and self-control stronger. With time, we gain more control over how we react. We become better at choosing thoughtful responses, even during stress. Every time you choose not to act on a harmful feeling, You're teaching your mind that discomfort doesn't mean danger. Feeling something deeply doesn't mean you need to act right away. This gap between the feeling and your action is where growth happens. A wise monk once said, when you feel anger rise, don't rush to put it out or throw it at someone. Let it burn inside you, let it clear your thoughts. Then speak from the calm ashes, not from the wild flames. This is not about denying emotions, but transforming them. You don't push them away, you direct them. You let them shape you into someone stronger. Abstinence isn't coldness, it's containment. It means becoming a container that can hold deep feelings without spilling them carelessly onto others. This ability is rare, but it's what makes someone trustworthy in love. It's not just about showing feelings, but about being smart with emotions. Reaching this level of discipline doesn't mean you avoid joy or closeness, it means you honor them. You bring to love the gift of your inner self-control. You can say, I don't need to own you. I want to walk with you with patience, presence, and depth. From here, true closeness begins. It's not built on fear or desperation, but on devotion. Love doesn't sweep you away like a storm, it becomes a steady flame that lasts. We begin to move through life with slower steps, deeper breaths, longer pauses, not from fear, but from deep respect for our connection to ourselves. When people hear about abstinence, they often think of lack, of saying no, of missing out. But for those on the inner journey, abstinence isn't about emptiness, it's about space. And space doesn't mean something's missing, it means potential. It's the gap between the urge and the reaction, between the longing and the action, between hoping and truly living. Practicing abstinence for clarity in relationships doesn't mean avoiding people. It means seeing relationships clearly, without emotional fog, without wishful thinking, and without covering others with your unmet needs. In a world so caught up in approval, quick pleasure, and rushed closeness, abstinence acts like a reset. It clears the glasses through which you see others, and even more, it clears the mirror through which you see yourself. What are you really looking for in another person? Are you seeking a true partner or someone to rescue you? Without stillness, how can you tell the difference? Solitude has a quiet wisdom, but solitude alone isn't enough. You need awareness while you're alone. That's where change happens. When the body steps away from its usual patterns, no touch, no flirting, no acting, the soul begins to speak. And its words are not always comforting. It might show you how much your wish for connection is actually an escape from your own company. One woman shared that after a painful string of relationships, she decided not to date for a year. Not because she gave up on men or love, but because she finally wanted to meet herself. She said, I needed to hear my own thoughts without someone else's voice in my head. I needed to know what made me feel safe without needing someone else to provide it. That year was hard at first. She felt lonely and unsure. But by the 6th month, a new kind of calm entered her life. She stopped reaching for her phone during quiet moments. She didn't dress for others' attention. She didn't change herself to please anyone. She became clear not only about what she wanted from a partner, but also about who she was as one. This is the kind of clarity that grows from abstinence. It doesn't come just from thinking, it comes from truly being. In some traditions, the mind is seen as a lake. When the water is stirred, we can't see below the surface. Only when it's still do we see what lies beneath. Relationships are like that. If you enter them with emotional noise, your vision is distorted. You see people through your hopes or fears, not as they are. Abstinence helps separate illusion from reality. You stop searching for someone to fix you. You look for someone to walk beside you, whole and real. You no longer want to be completed, just met, honestly and fully. And clarity is not just a mental thing, it's a physical one too. When your body is always surrounded by noise, emotions, distractions, it loses its sensitivity. Like a muscle that's overused, your emotions get numb. You can't tell the difference between deep connection and familiar addiction. Abstinence cleans this up. It resets your emotional senses. It lets your body feel again. Like after a break from sugar, even a piece of fruit tastes sweet. In the same way, after emotional fasting, avoiding shallow dating, fake compliments, meaningless intimacy, even a real conversation becomes rich. A gentle touch feels powerful. A shared silence becomes sacred. But to get there, you must go through the discomfort. For many, abstinence shows them how much they've been running from themselves. In silence, old fears surface: fear of not being enough, fear of being invisible or abandoned. These fears are not your enemies, they are your teachers. If you always run into someone's arms to avoid them, you'll never know which pain is really yours to heal. One man said that his habit of jumping from one relationship to the next finally broke after 6 months of celibacy and solitude. He said, "I realized I never asked what I truly value in a woman beyond attraction. I was so scared of being alone that I confused chemistry with real connection, desire with love, her presence with my worth." When he returned to dating, he moved slowly. He asked better questions. He listened not just to words, but to energy, and more importantly, he listened to himself. Abstinence gave him more than willpower, it gave him clarity. And that's where wisdom in love begins. Think about this. The kind of partner you attract usually matches the kind of energy you give off. If your energy is needy or confused, you attract people who feed off that. But when your energy is steady, grounded, and full, you attract people who are also balanced. Abstinence teaches you how to grow that kind of energy. It helps you learn to create love from inside, so love from outside becomes a gift, not a need. In Chinese healing, they speak of Jing, your core life energy. It gets used up by too much stimulation, distraction, or chasing. But it can be restored through rest, breathwork, holding back, and nurturing yourself. Someone with strong Jing is magnetic. They don't chase attention, they draw it naturally. Not because they try, but because they have substance. In love, this shows up as presence. People feel it. They may not know why, but they feel safe around you because you've stopped leaking your energy. You are whole. The next stage in this path is tied to how you enter relationships with awareness. This is sacred intention. It's not just about choosing someone, it's about knowing why. Many people enter relationships without thinking, pulled by loneliness, hormones, or pressure. They attach without asking deeper questions. But sacred intention brings attention to your choices. Every act of closeness becomes meaningful. You're not just seeking pleasure, you're sharing energy. You're not just hoping to be seen, you're learning to see. You're not just taking, you're giving. To really feel this, abstinence helps. It gives you space to reflect. You begin asking questions you never asked in the rush of desire. Am I drawn to this person because of something real or because of my wounds? Does this person reflect what I value most, or do they just calm my fears? Sacred intention asks, where are we going as individuals and together? It doesn't need to control, it just needs clarity. There's an old saying, don't fight the changes life brings. Let life move through you. Sacred intention honors this. It doesn't block change, but it doesn't throw away wisdom either. It knows that not every spark is meant to become a flame. Some people enter your life just to teach you something and then move on. One woman met a man during yoga training. They had instant chemistry, long talks, laughter, eye contact. But something in her had changed. After years of healing and celibacy, she had grown sensitive to energy. So she didn't rush. She watched. Over time, she saw his actions didn't match his words. He would disappear emotionally, avoid deep questions, and keep his intentions unclear. In the past, she might have ignored these red flags, but now, guided by sacred intention, she stepped away. She respected the attraction, but respected herself more. In doing this, she stayed true to her inner value. This is what abstinence does. It strengthens your inner compass. It teaches you not to trade your peace for short-term excitement. It reminds you that the way you love yourself sets the tone for every other connection. Even how you show up in relationships matters. How do you listen? How do you touch? How do you act not just when it's easy, but when things are hard? Deep love is a spiritual practice. It's not an accident. It's a choice, and that choice takes discipline. There's an old Zen story about a monk. When asked how he treats every meeting, he replied with three things: full attention, respect, and emptiness. Attention to truly see. Respect to honor the other. Emptiness to not let the past cloud the moment. Abstinence helps you do this. It clears out what's old: past relationships, past versions of you, past pain. It creates space, and into that space, intention flows clear, gentle, strong. Your soul doesn't rush. It waits, and when it speaks, it gives not orders, but truth. This truth turns abstinence from avoidance into devotion. It's no longer about what you're holding back from, it's about what you're preparing to receive. You don't become cold, you become deeply warm but wisely guarded. Not closed, just careful. Not hard, just clear. Abstinence becomes an act of love, not only for others, but for yourself. It's a promise: I won't settle. I won't betray myself. I won't lower my energy to fit what doesn't honor me. From this place, real love can grow, not the kind that fades quickly, but the kind that takes root, season after season, with strength, gentleness, and soul. When the body gets quiet, the soul speaks, not with noise, but with understanding. Abstinence has never really been about denial. It has always been about remembering who you are when no one's around, what matters to you when nothing distracts you, and how your deepest needs are met not through noise and activity, but through stillness, focus, and real presence. In the silence, you hear what the world drowns out. You are not empty alone. You are whole. Love isn't something to chase, it's something you become ready for. Intimacy is not how close bodies get, it's how open hearts are. Every moment of restraint, whether physical, emotional, or digital, is not a loss, it's a return. A return to self-respect. A return to deep intention. A return to a peaceful, centered nervous system. You now know that real relationships don't begin the moment you meet someone. They begin with how you've prepared, the space you've made, the wounds you've healed, the energy you've guarded. Abstinence, when used with purpose, makes room for something deeper. Not because you've lacked, but because you've waited with wisdom. This is self-mastery, not pushing feelings down, but living in balance, and that balance comes from knowing your breath, your body, your emotions, and your soul. Through abstinence, you don't become smaller, you become more. More complete, more grounded, more vibrant. So when you choose quiet, choose it not from fear, but from love for yourself, for your journey, and for the kind of love you now know you're ready to receive. Let that silence shape your knowing. Let it guide your path. Let it prepare you to walk into life, not to find completion, but to walk in wholeness. Because abstinence is not the end of desire, it is desire raised to its highest form. It is desire that is mature, grounded, sacred. And from that sacred place, real connection is born. This kind of connection doesn't just happen suddenly. It grows slowly, like roots spreading deep into the earth. When you meet someone from a place of wholeness, something different takes place. There is no rush to prove yourself, no panic to be enough, no fear of being left behind. There is instead a calmness, a quiet joy in just being present. You see them clearly, and you let yourself be seen. Not because you need validation, but because your presence is already rooted in self-respect. Abstinence, when practiced with intention, helps you reach this state of readiness. It builds a strong foundation where love is not a rescue, but a meeting, where two people bring their fullness, not their wounds, to the table, where love becomes something to be nurtured, not something to cling to in fear. You begin to notice how you no longer chase after love, but invite it. You no longer fall into patterns, but move with purpose. In this space, your words carry more truth. Your actions carry more weight. Your silence carries more peace, because everything you offer comes from a centered place, not from anxiety or insecurity. You're no longer trying to convince someone to stay. You're simply showing up as you are and trusting that what is meant for you will stay. There's a freedom in this kind of living. You're free to feel joy without fear of losing it. Free to connect deeply without losing yourself. Free to give without needing something back to feel worthy. This is the power of emotional self-mastery. It allows love to be what it was always meant to be, a sharing, not a solving. And slowly, you begin to understand that the love you thought you were looking for outside was already being built inside. The attention you wanted from others was a mirror of the attention you needed to give yourself. The affection you craved was the same affection your own soul had been asking for, and now you give it. Freely, gently, daily, you learn how to hold your own hand through the dark nights. You learn how to encourage yourself when doubt whispers. You learn how to celebrate small moments of peace and joy. You become your own steady ground. From this steady place, everything changes, not because the world becomes easier, but because you are no longer shaken by every storm. People around you will sense this shift. They may not understand it, but they'll feel it. They'll feel your energy, calm, whole, present. Some may be drawn closer. Others may fall away. You won't chase after what leaves. You'll trust that what stays is aligned with your truth. This is the quiet strength. You now carry the strength to let go with grace and to receive with openness. You begin to see that real love doesn't rush in. It moves slowly, carefully, listening for the soul's yes. It doesn't push or pressure. It waits until both hearts are ready, until both lives are open, until both people are prepared to give, not just take. And when that moment comes, it feels safe. It feels right. Not because it's perfect, but because it's rooted in truth. The love that grows from abstinence is not built on fantasy. It's not built on drama or chaos. It's built on realness, on showing up, on seeing each other in the light of day, not just in the thrill of night. It's about staying, choosing, building even when things are not easy. And this kind of love, this kind of partnership, becomes sacred. Not because you said the right things or followed the right steps, but because you prepared for it. You built the strength inside to hold it. You made space for it to enter. You trained your heart not just to want, but to give with awareness. This is what it means to love with depth, to love with clarity, to love with patience. It is no longer about finding someone to complete you, but walking beside someone as a complete being. Two people, standing side by side, choosing each other not from emptiness, but from overflow. When you walk this path, you don't just become someone who can love. You become someone who can be loved in a real way, because you no longer hide parts of yourself. You no longer shrink to fit someone's idea of you. You no longer pretend to be less sensitive, less deep, less emotional. You allow yourself to be seen, and in doing so, you give others permission to do the same, and this is where true intimacy begins. When two souls meet without masks, when two hearts speak without fear, when two lives join not in need but in harmony, when love becomes not just a feeling, but a shared practice of care, respect, and truth. This is why the time spent in solitude, in quiet, in abstinence, is never wasted. It is sacred preparation. It is the deep work of remembering who you are, so you never again lose yourself in someone else. It is the choice to stop chasing what doesn't align and to start building what does. It is the slow becoming of a person who knows their worth and who walks through life as a light not looking for love, but radiating it. So continue to choose stillness when noise tempts you. Continue to choose presence when distraction calls. Continue to choose self-respect when old patterns whisper. Your path is sacred. Your journey matters. And every step you take in awareness is shaping you into someone who not only gives love, but receives it in its highest, most honest form. Love, in its purest form, will recognize you. It will feel your calm. It will match your energy. It will honor your growth. And when it arrives, you'll know not because it will sweep you off your feet, but because it will ground you. It will feel like home, and you'll be ready. Not because you waited perfectly, but because you waited with intention. You held space for something real. You practiced showing up for yourself. You grew the capacity to stay centered. You learned how to love not just others, but your own soul. And that, dear one, is the true gift of abstinence. The return to self, the opening to love, the quiet power of readiness.